Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast. It is Saturday, the 20th of September. The Billie Jean King Cup finals, semi-finals have just been completed, which means there is just one stage to go in the crescendo of the 2025 competition. We're going to be talking about the semi-finals today, looking ahead to the final. We're going to be doing it all with Matt and David because Matt has been good enough to squeeze a podcast into his schedule ahead of the football. Very good of you to be here, Matt. Making a point by wearing your Fulham kit, of course. Places you'd rather be.
Well, it's Derby Day, so had to be worn. But luckily, it was looking a little bit dicey for a second as Katie Bolter threatened to take Great Britain and the USA into a deciding match. But happily, I can be in two places at once. Two of my favourite places, on the podcast and at Craven Cottage, all in one day.
Yeah, today's podcast comes to you courtesy of the Jessica Pegula comeback. Matt has never been less Team GB than in the last 90 minutes. Super coach David Law is here. Hello, David.
Yep, coached my son's under 14s to, well, I say coached. I stood on the touchline and said, come on, boys, as we won 4-2, which is a rare occurrence.
From tennis, David, that is what coaching is.
Yep, yeah, exactly. Next
right
one,
here.
next
now,
one, boys.
on.
Don't
yeah,
worry about that
one.
one.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that.
Right here.
So, yeah, I did that in the morning. And, yeah, I was torn because I mean, and it's not a sort of patriotic thing. Obviously, I guess I get a little bit of a rumbling in the stomach watching Britain and wanting them to do well because I'm British. But at the same time,
hungry watching Great Britain.
Well, I get hungry most of the time, actually, if I'm stood around too much. But I was kind of into the comeback, and also I loved I've loved the competition of all of these ties. I mean, there's been really only one duffer of a tie, which was the Britain against Japan one, which wasn't that great. But even in the straightforward ones in terms of 2-0s, they've all had drama and intrigue, and I really wouldn't have minded seeing doubles in this, and at the same time, I love the comebacks in these two rubbers that we had today.
Yeah, we've had two great sets of semi-finals. Today we had the USA beating GB 2-0, the doubles not needed, but two incredibly tight singles matches won by Emma Navarro and Jessica Pegula, the USA reaching their first final of this competition since 2018. And yesterday we had Italy beating Ukraine 2-1. Marta Kostyuk beating Elisabetta Cocciaretto 6-2, 6-3. Then things just started happening. Jasmine Paolini coming back from 3-6, 2-4 down to beat Elina Svitolina, and Sara Rani and Jasmine Paolini teaming up in the doubles to beat Marta Kostyuk and Ludmila Kichenok. 6-2, 6-3 in the doubles to get them to yet another final. This tie had everything, Matt.
I feel like I've taken a lot of flack on this podcast over the last couple of days, and I would like to turn it back on you two and get you both to start.
You're silencing the doubters era.
I really am. I want an apology from both of you for underestimating Jasmine Paolini.
Oh, come on. She nearly got beaten again. I mean, I was that close from getting the bang-on final.
The word you're looking for, David.
Yeah.
I underestimated Jasmine Paolini again.
Thank you.
It keeps happening.
Yeah, let's talk about this match. This was the one, wasn't it? What an incredible tie. Well, incredible tie, but what an incredible match and rubber this was. The Jasmine Paolini comeback, the Elina Svitolina. I don't know. Was it a choke? It was certainly a tightening. It was certainly an uncomfortable watch in terms of the visible nerves, the very understandable visible nerves. But I personally think, I mean, maybe it's semantics, but I personally think choke is going too far. But you certainly saw all the evidence of how desperately she wanted it there. Writ large on her face and in her racket arm. She tightened up so badly, didn't she? And it was It was it was a thrilling watch, but an incredibly anxious and tense watch as well.
Yeah, I think if you had to pinpoint a moment, it would be the game when Svitolina was leading by a set and 4-2. And in that game, she hit a double fault and she missed a bit of a sitter of a volley on top of the net to help Paolini get the break back. And that was right at a time when Svitolina was just starting to move away from the incredibly impressive, bold, aggressive tennis that had got her in that winning position. You know, David's absolutely right. Like, Svitolina was outplaying Jasmine Paolini here, serving really well and then just teeing off from the ground and put herself in that winning position. But yeah, at that moment, she started to not quite swing through the ball quite so strongly, and she started to drop the ball a bit short, and I think her feet got a little bit heavy, and you could see the angst on her face as the finish line was right there, but she knew that she was starting to get tight and get nervous, and simultaneously Jasmine Paolini seized on that small bit of opportunity and stepped up and started going after her shots and exhibiting a lot better body language. And it was those two things happening at once that really sort of turned this one around. But yeah, that game at 4-2, I think Svitolina will have a lot of regrets over it, because she should have closed it and moved within one game of the match, but let Paolini in. And we've just seen Paolini do such incredible things in this competition, power Italy over the finish line, and you know, she'd literally come back from the same scoreline, a set and 4-2 down in the quarterfinals. You know, she was primed for that kind of comeback. And once she got back into it, Paolini, she really did sort of take over, and I think was the deserving winner in the third set, even though that third set had its incredible dramatic moments as well. There was a almost 17-minute hold of serve for Paolini right at the start of the third set, and she did come through it, saving numerous break points, and then she broke straight away in the very next game, and I think that was a bit of a crusher for Svitolina. Svitolina did recover that break eventually to make it 4-all in the third set, but then played a really poor game just to give the break back to Paolini and allow Paolini to serve it out. So there were these tight moments throughout this incredible contest, with both of them just giving absolutely everything. But I do think it was a tightening, as you say, Catherine, of Svitolina, which just opened the door for Paolini, and then she just ran right through it. And you had these opposing scenes, the absolutely irresistible joy of Jasmine Paolini and the crushing heartbreak, really, of Alina Svitolina. You know, how many chances is she going to have to be in that position to put Ukraine into the Billie Jean King Cup finals? We don't know. That felt like the moment, and it got away from her.
And I think it felt particularly like the moment because, okay, Kostyuk had already won. A win for Svitolina would have put Ukraine through, not needing the doubles, but because it's Irani and Paolini waiting in the doubles, it feels like the whole tie, kind of, no matter who they're playing. That second singles feels like the whole tie. You know, Kostyuk Kitchenok is a good doubles team. I thought they played pretty well and had their moments in the doubles, but Irani and Paolini are just a class apart. And I mean, it's obvious, isn't it, that that's the difference maker, but it not only impacts the fact that they more often than not, or almost always, win the doubles, but it impacts mentally the dynamics of the singles matches, because it's Irani and Paolini waiting in the doubles who are, I'm not going to say foregone conclusion, not in the same podcast I'm having to fess up to underestimating Jasmine Paolini, but it's not far off, David.
No, it makes me desperately want to see a deciding doubles between Irani, Paolini and any team involving Taylor Townsend, really, because I think that she's about the only match that I could imagine that might find a way. But in this one, See, I don't view it as a choke, but it certainly, I agree with you that it was a tightening, and I think that that's understandable and acceptable in any match for you to have a moment where you're not quite as good as the rest of it, and that's what I think Svitolina had there. It was, I think it was nerves induced, but it wasn't much. She didn't give her much to work with there. I mean, she was dominating that match. I felt all week long that Paolini was hanging on just energy-wise, even though she finds it within herself to get motivated. And I mean, she's always motivated, but to get inspired and to get energetic when actually I think she's been really flagging a bit and struggling a bit for form and just celebrating the point she digs out. Well, suddenly she found something that I haven't seen all tournament from that 4-2 point onwards. And yes, there was that really long service hold at the start of the third set, but all the way through, I don't feel like Svitolina just disappeared. Svitolina, I thought, was playing bloody tough tennis in that third set and asking all the right questions. She was trying to go for a shot still. She was staying in a lot of rallies, lengthening them, asking just about every type of question you can ask in a deciding set. And I sort of thought, sooner or later, Paolini's level has got to dip here. It just didn't. And I got a new level of respect for her in that third set because of what she withstood and with it all on the line like that. She played her very best tennis of the tournament. Some of the best tennis I've seen her play all year in the third set of that semi-final. And you can take nothing away from her in that regard. I mean, yes, I think Svitolina gave her just that little bit of a door opening in the second set, but that doesn't do Paolini enough credit really for what she did. And then you come out half an hour later when you could very easily think the job's done, and no, she goes and joins up with Irani and does another thoroughly professional job, and kind of, well, she's on the court and does her side of the court and lets Irani just take over the way she does. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because I didn't see it coming. I mean, they're basically 3 sets to love down, 3 game, in terms of what Kostyuk's just put up, and to think that they've won it from there, and they've kept doing it all week long.
Yeah, I felt for Kostyuk because I thought, she was absolutely locked in right from the start of her match against Elisabetta Cocciaretto. Didn't give her anything. Had a real look in her eye. Had a lovely blend when Kostyuk plays well, in that she can really go after the ball and attack the ball, but she's also a great athlete and mover, and she can defend well and make life tricky for a player like Cocciaretto, who can't really out-hit her or outlast her. So there was kind of nowhere for Cocciaretto to go in that one. And, Kostyuk puts them 1-0 up. And, we wondered, didn't we, about, does Paolini have a Svitolina problem? I'd actually forgotten that she had match points at the French Open. I knew that match was close, but I'd forgotten just how close Paolini was to winning it. And I think that sort of demonstrated that, okay, there wasn't a huge match-up problem. I felt maybe some of it was maybe mental baggage, because Paolini had won the first set in Australia and ended up losing. She'd won the first set in Paris and had match points and ended up losing. And then she loses the first set here. It's almost like the team environment, I think probably Gar being on the bench was helpful in that respect, and just not allowing her to sort of get down on this matchup that she was still in. And she just kept believing, and we've explained how she turned the match around. So yeah, it was really interesting seeing that dynamic that we've seen on tour or at the slams this year play out in a different competition with just a different set of circumstances. And I think those ended up kind of helping Paolini in this one. And yeah, Paolini and Irani in the doubles, I can't get enough.
How good was Irani?
And straight away, she was the best player on the court.
Right.
I find it so interesting how a lot of the time you hear players say that singles players who've played singles that day, then coming into the doubles, will be the sharp ones because they're seeing the ball really well. And, I thought Kostyuk and Paolini played well in this doubles. But Irani, having been on the bench the whole day, was sharp straight away and is able to impose herself. She's able to impose her game, but also her personality on a match. In that, like, she really is like the leader of that team. She's constantly like shouting at Paolini in terms of like instructing her whether to go for something or leave it, or she's the one who says yours and mine. Like she's the real leader in that, and she takes charge of the net with those incredible reactions. I love Paolini's topspin forehands that act as lobs in the doubles. She's not actually properly doing a lob. She's just hitting her topspin forehand a little bit higher than she normally would, and it throws her opponents off the court with pace. It's an incredibly devastating shot. They continue to back up Irani's serve incredibly effectively. And I think the sharpness of Irani was contrasted with a bit of a cold performance from Kichinok actually coming off the bench. I thought she was the weak link overall in this one. And yeah, I'm absolutely with David. I would love to see, obviously, the whole competition go down to the deciding doubles, but take the competition out of it. Just the intrigue of have the US got a probably singles player and world number one doubles player combination that can trouble the experience and the canny nature of Irani and Paolini. That I'm just desperate to see that tomorrow. Okay,
well, before we do more of a deep dive look ahead to the final, let's talk about how Team USA got there. It's very fresh in our minds. We've just been watching it. They beat Team GB 2-0. Emma Navarro beating Sonny Cartel from a set down, 3-6, 6-4, 6-3. And Jessica Bagula by an almost identical scoreline, beating Katie Bolter 3-6, 6-4, 6-2. Navarro Cartel in particular, I thought was a real surprise delight of a match, David.
Yeah, I think there's something about Cartel's game that is quite tricky for the top players who haven't seen that much of it, and it is a bit different to everybody else who's around. There are a few players that hit the forehand like Cartel does, but they've kind of retired. You think of Ash Barty, and you think of Caroline Garcia, people who've got this heavy forehand which is hit with a very extreme grip that seems to hang on to the strings for a long time, and therefore when it flights over the net, it's not your normal ball. It doesn't go in a straight line. It doesn't go like an arrow like some of them do and then just drop. This one just seems to rise, and then sink like a stone at the end. And you think, you mentioned earlier on to us, Catherine, you keep thinking the thing's going out, and then it doesn't. From the camera
angle on the TV, I'm watching, thinking every time she strikes the forehand, I'm like, oh, it's going 2 feet long, and then it plops in, foot and a half inside the baseline. It's I'm sort of on the edge of my seat all the time when she's hitting forehands.
And then the thing is, when it hits the ground, it then leaps off the ground with extra on it as well. So I think it's a tough ball to play against, and she's actually a much better player than her ranking, I think, Cartel. And I think she probably didn't get the results that she might have expected after Wimbledon. And I dare say they're going to come. I think she's got more ahead of her. Navarro has not been playing that well, really, this last few months. And it's probably easier to say in hindsight, and when you're watching it and she's a set down and she's losing, that I was thinking actually, I wouldn't have minded having Hailey Baptiste in this match from an America point of view. She's another one with a forehand a little bit like that sometimes. She's got a bit more of a slap on the ball, whereas I know Navarro strokes the ball more. But I love the way Navarro got back into it. There was no panic, and then there was actually quite a lot of time at the net. She was suddenly quickening things up and kind of just. I don't know whether this was a tactic that she cooked up with Lindsay Davenport or whether it was herself, but I think she's a very clever match player that if things aren't going quite right, she can find something else to do. And you better put her away, because she's had a lot of 3-set wins in her career, I think. I can certainly think, even just anecdotally, about a lot of them this year. And she just very cleverly turned that match around and sort of showed her top 10 class, even though she's actually not at that ranking. Towards the end, she was showing why.
And she's incredibly fit, isn't she? She seems as fresh and lively and on it and sort of up on the balls of her feet as much at the end of a match like that as at the beginning of it, but potentially even more so at the end. Like she seems to get stronger as the match goes on, Matt.
Yeah, and that's something that I think in recent months, we talk about her slight lack of form over these past few months. That has gone away a bit. She started the year with an incredible record in deciding sets, winning 7 of her first 9 this year, and that was backing up 21 of 31 she won last year. But in the last few months, she has started to lose these 3-set matches. But this week at the Billie Jean King Cup, they've just been in her image, haven't they? Gritting her teeth and coming through deciding set battles against Putintseva and Cartel today. And I loved this match. I thought it was so stylish. I think, we've shouted out the Cartel forehand. I think the other shot that she has, and Navarro has it as well, is a slice backhand. It's quite rare, I think, on the WTA Tour that you get 2 players so comfortable slicing their backhands. And it made for exchanges that you didn't really know when they were going to end. And combined with great athleticism, particularly Navarro, is such an efficient and sort of quiet mover on a tennis court, but really quick and agile. And they just kept turning defence into attack. And a lot of the time it was as a result of their slice backhands, extending rallies, putting the ball in awkward spots. I just really liked the way they matched up against each other. And Cartel is clearly going through a developmental phase with her game. If you think back to the summer, she had that odd service motion when she was sort of putting her racket up high and then throwing the ball up after that. Well, she's got a slightly more conventional service motion at the moment, but I think she's trying to make some gains in that shot, and I think that would be something that could potentially take her up another level, because from the back of the court, okay, she's not got explosive power, but she's got enough power, and she's got the combination of the topspin forehand and the slice backhand. The topspin backhand's pretty good too. She was hitting that down the line really well, I thought, today. So there's definitely a really good player in there with Cartel, but credit to Navarro, as you said, for sticking in there, turning it round. I think Cartel played a couple of poor games after getting the 3rd set back on serve. She just went away a little bit, just slightly fell apart, and that was enough for Navarro to really close it out. But yeah, I thought this was a really enjoyable match to watch. I just liked the way they came up against each other stylistically. I would like to see it again.
In terms of the second rubber of this tie, Pegula against Bolter, when we previewed it a couple of days ago, we talked about how Bolter had got a win over Jessica Pegula at United Cup last year, and I said, but that was peak Katie Bolter, and we haven't seen peak Katie Bolter for a while. In fact, she's been far, far from it for quite a while now. Well, for a set today, we saw that Katie Bolter, and more potentially. It was so good in the first set from Bolter that it just inevitably felt unsustainable. David, it was almost too good. Like, oh well, you can't keep this up. And she didn't drop off a cliff at all. She stayed competitive, but she dropped off enough, and Pegula upped her level enough that the tables turned completely.
Yeah, it's a bit of a high wire act for Katie Bolter, because she's almost having to try to play like Elena Rybakina, and she's just not as good as Elena Rybakina. And that's not to diss her. I mean, Rybakina is just an absolutely top draw player when she's at her best, and she does it without needing to extend the very limits of her game, whereas Bolter is having to hit out, particularly on the forehand, but she was also cracking the backhand. But the moment the ball was on her forehand, she was trying to pretty much end rallies or put herself in total charge of them. And if you think of it, that's her game at its limits. It's also in perfect circumstances, indoors, her type of court, Billie Jean King Cup, where she's played, I would say, the best tennis I've seen her play overall. This was pretty much as good as it can get, I think, for Bolter, and she needed time to run out on Pegula. Pegula just needed to dig in and find a way to not be losing before she kind of got to grips with the game and got her own game working. And that's what she managed. It's scrappy at the start of the second set. That could very easily have gone straight sets if she'd have allowed it. But that's totally in keeping with what we've seen. And I should say, that's what happened against Rybakina. It was just, she just could never get into the match. But here she's playing a player not of that level. So she was able to just hang around, keep it scrappy. And that's what's been happening all the way through these matches throughout the ties, is people have been turning matches around by just sticking in. And it shows how you can do that. If you can get into a best of 3 set match, there is enough time. It's just that sometimes people are cold. I was impressed with both. I think Bolter, she can't really have too many regrets there. I think she approached it in just the right way. She had to swing and connect, and she did those things to get a lead. But Pegula, she gave credit to Navarro actually as the player that she just watched turn a match around like that, and she did. She virtually did the same thing. Good tie, and I think the winners make sense. The 2-0 makes sense when you look at the respective rankings.
She strikes me as like perfect for a team environment. Jessica Pegula, I imagine she's a very galvanising force in that US team. I mean, obviously she's played a lot of doubles in her career. That is a team version of the sport. But she's also, don't think she's a big ego, is she? Even though she's the leader of that team, she's experienced, but she's incredibly experienced. She just seems like somebody that can get along with everybody and create a good vibe, almost a kind of sub-captain to Lindsay Davenport kind of a role. And with a team like the US, whose problem has not been lack of talent, it's been being less than a sum of their parts, not feeling like a cohesive, settled team. I suspect she's helped in kind of fast-tracking that feeling of settlement within this US team.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it and describing her qualities as a person, which will contribute to this team in addition to her qualities as a player. And I was also thinking, kind of a big deal for her to be playing Billie Jean King Cup this week rather than Seoul. A couple of years ago, she played and won Seoul. Her mother was born in Korea. I think it was a big deal for her to go to that event and play it. And she didn't play it last year, having reached the US Open final, and there being that quick turnaround. But given she's playing this week, I think it would have been pretty understandable if she wanted to go and play in Seoul. I think that tournament has a real connection for her, or she has a connection with it. But no, she's at the Billie Jean King Cup. She's put her hand up for this. I think she's basically said she'll play singles and doubles. If it does go to a deciding doubles match, I'd be surprised if Pegula's not out there, with Townsend. So she's giving absolutely everything. And yeah, she's just been that sort of constant presence in American tennis over the past 5 years or so. I feel like a lot of other players have had bigger highs. We've seen Grand Slam champions from the US, and they've not been Pegula. But kind of all of those players have had probably bigger lows than Pegula's had. So it kind of feels fitting that Pegula is the one who is there and helping guide the US back to a final. And now, question is whether she can get them over the line.
Okay, that's it for part 1. We'll answer that question in part 2. Welcome back to part 2 of today's tennis podcast, where we have a final to look ahead to the Billie Jean King Cup finals final. Love it when a name is catchy. Between Italy, the
championship
defending
match.
So bad.
Just call it the Billie Jean King Cup final.
I know.
People.
Yeah.
Why do they have to make it difficult?
I'm going to from now on, David. I was just ticking that box. Italy against the USA. Now then, we know it's going to be, unless somebody picks up a injury overnight or something, we know it's going to be Pegula against Paolini in terms of the number one players. Jessica Pegula, David, has a 5-0 head-to-head against Jasmine Paolini. So would it be overestimating Paolini to suggest that she might win this match? 5-0.
That makes
You've got to include the caveat.
I have got to include the caveat. Yeah, I was just going to let it sink in for David and for any listeners. The caveat is that they haven't played since 2023.
Okay, that doesn't count.
2023 was back when that was the good draw.
That was when I was allowed to underestimate her.
Right. But it's not nothing, is it?
And it's all straight sets.
It doesn't make any sense to me game-wise, though. When I think of those two players, that doesn't make any sense to me. Not that I don't think Pegula would win a fair share. To me, they're very evenly matched, and maybe Pegula would have a slight advantage. Look at her ranking has been higher overall in recent years. But that is not a ball that I look at and think, oh, Jasmine Paolini can't handle that ball. You know, that's not what I'm looking at when I see them as tennis players. That having been said, I probably would have been a little surprised unless I knew about the Svitolina head-to-head, you know, and Paolini struggles with that one, because whilst, yes, I am the absolute arch culprit of underestimating Jasmine Paolini in terms of when it comes to predicting who's going to win, as a player, just watching her, I think her game stands up against most players. So it's a curious one. And I think the way they're both playing right now, I think this could be really, really close. I don't know what you two think. I mean, I don't see either of them. Well, who do I think is going to actually win? Well, I do. I think I'm going to go for Paolini. I think. Because I think we're going to get the doubles. Maybe I just want the doubles so much that I'm making that happen in my head. But I don't think this is going to be straightforward. I can't see this final being straightforward. I think we're going to get that doubles, and I don't think Italy will win the other one. So I'm going to go with Paolini.
The other one, again, barring injury, I think we're going to see Emma Navarro, aren't we? She's given absolutely no reason to think that she should or could be dropped for this. She's 1-0 against Elisabetta Cocciaretto. She's never played Lucia Bronzetti. Do you think it will be Cocciaretto? And do you think Cocciaretto has much of a chance here? Do you think we're going to see the doubles, Matt?
It's a lot of questions. I think it probably will be Cocciaretto. I think it would be a big call to change it now. I know that Italy have changed their number 2 player at past editions of the Billie Jean King Cup finals. They're not averse to doing that, but I don't think they've done it in the final. You know, I think that would be a bit of a move. I must say that I wasn't that impressed with Cocciaretto against Kostyuk. It kind of goes to what you were saying, Catherine, about a known. What was it? A known versus an unknown. You know.
That's a Donald Rumsfeld thing, isn't it?
I think they'll go Cocciaretto. But whoever they play, I think they'll lose, to be honest. I think Navarro will win that, whoever she plays. I'm not going to underestimate Jasmine Paolini. You won't. You simply won't catch me doing that. So
does that mean we're going to get the doubles?
So we're going to get the doubles. I have to say, I think for Pegula it will be a bit of a relief not to. I know Paolini's a great striker of the ball. I think it will be a bit of a relief not to face someone in the mould of Rybakina and Bolta, as she's played in the last couple of days, who I think she's been a bit rocked by the way they've been able to take the racket out of her hand. Like she was frustrated today, Pegula, and look, she turned it around impressively. But Paolini's not going to quite do that. It's going to be much more of a battle, really. I think.
Yeah, it must be a not enjoyable feeling to be waiting for your opponent's level to drop, to feel like I need to do I need to passively wait for something in order to win this match. Now, there's a lot more to it than that. She raised her level. I felt like she got Bolter moving a bit more. Once Bolter's level did drop, she was very canny in how she exploited that. It's not as simple as that, but equally, I mean, it was as simple as that against Rybakina. It was, unless Rybakina's level drops, Pegula doesn't have a chance here. And honestly, in that first set against Bolter, it must have felt quite similar for Pegula, who, given her ranking is so much higher than Bolter's and her pedigree, that's got to be a slightly startling feeling.
And I think she also needed Bolter's serve to fall off, as it did. I think Bolter's first serve percentage went down into the 30s in that second set, which really allowed Pegula to make a lot more returns, and she'll be able to do that against Paolini. It's not really a tennis thing. I agree with David. Like, I think this version of Paolini, post 2023 Paolini up against Pegula, to me, they would be splitting matches. Like they would have an even head to head. I can't really, having not seen the matchup, come up with a obvious tennis reason why I would favour one over the other. I fall back on Billie Jean King Cup vibes, Paolini, the way we've seen her constantly step up. I just think she's got one more in her, and I think she takes
she might need
it to the
two
doubles.
more in her, Matt, to actually win it.
True. 1.5, 1.25. Irani can do the rest.
Irani can do the rest.
Anyone want to change their prediction? David, you've got the US. Matt, you've got Italy.
I think I'm still going to go the US overall, because I'm just stubborn. That's half of my problem is I just refuse to accept that I wasn't right at the start, because I was so close to being right, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if I was right? But I wasn't.
I think I'm going to stick with the US, because I think they might do it in the singles, but if it goes to the doubles, I would pick Italy. I would pick Irani and Paolini.
Oh, interesting. So I'm going Italy in the doubles. Catherine, you're going US in the singles, and David's going US in the doubles.
I'm going US, right? I think that they could do it both ways, but I don't feel strongly that they're going to win it that way. But
so you're underestimating Paolini in the singles again.
I'm going to go in the doubles, but I think straight sets is possible too. But I think
that's it, right? The US have got two routes. I think the US can win it in the singles, and they can win it in the doubles.
I don't see Italy winning it in both, in either one.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. The US,
the person we're underestimating here is Elizabeth Giretto. Let's be clear
that's
about
for
this.
sure. And honestly,
who's going to come out?
I'm quite comfortable with that.
She's going to give a Wimbledon Pegula performance now and just make everybody look like fools.
Yeah, she'd way prefer to play Pegula than Navarro, presumably.
It's quite interesting how the US as a team do negate those strengths of Italy. Like what gets Italy through is knowing they can rely on Paolini, and then knowing they can rely on Paolini and Irani. Well, they're actually up against a team who pretty much can match them in those two matches, and are better in the number two singles. So I do think the US are favourites here. I do think if you just sort of look at it, like they've got more of a chance in more of the matches. So I do think the US are favourites, but I'm going to go Italy.
Can I just give a word for the captains as well? I mean, we've talked a little bit about Davenport, and I just get the sense that she could figure out strategy and ways to talk to people to get the best out of them. But also Tatiana Garbine, I don't know what she's saying, right? But just the way she reacts to things makes me feel that she's totally in tune with what's required at any given moment. Her reaction, like at one point, she kind of reacted and turned around to the crowd and the support team and sort of went, "Come on, get into, that's the point to get into it on, because she's just produced a worldie and you lot need to be up," was the gist of it. And I thought, here's somebody who really gets what captaincy's about. There's a way to get the best out of people, and there's a way to approach things in a certain way, and I think she's just got it.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think the Italian team really play for her. She's been the captain for a few years now. She had some real health struggles in that time as well, and I think there's been a real togetherness in that team, playing for her and wanting to do it for her. And yeah, like you, David, I can't understand the Italian, but I've been in a few press conferences with her where she's spoken in English, and she has a way with words, even in English, which isn't, she's not that confident speaking English, but she's still able to get across real meaning and emotion in the way she speaks. And yeah, I think they're a great unit, and she's a big part of the Italian success in this competition over the last few years.
Okay, we will see tomorrow, won't we? We'll be back with a podcast after tomorrow's Billie Jean King Cup final. Our podcast will be at 8 p.m. UK time. We'll be live on YouTube. I expect Billie Jean will make quite a cameo, as she has done in today's show, if you've been watching on YouTube, because she keeps hearing her name. She's like, they're making a podcast about me. So that'll be live tomorrow, 8 p.m. on YouTube, and of course it will be available as a podcast as normal as well. Hello to our mascots, Phoebe, Maisie and Roger. Hello to our top folks and executive producers, Greg, Chris and Jeff. Shout-outs have been mysteriously removed from the agenda today because Matt has got a football game to get to, so we'll let him do that. We'll say thank you to The Athletic. We are part of The Athletic Podcast Network. Make sure you watch the Billie Jean King Cup final tomorrow if you possibly can, and do join us for a podcast at the end of it all. Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you then.